Hi, this is the lesson from the 1st of October, story writing for Creative English at Bracknell and Wokingham College. The lesson objectives are to develop Monday's plan into a written story called Making Amends, engage the reader using literary techniques, and evaluate your own literary techniques by labelling them. So this was the plan that I made for my story. You may remember this from last lesson. So the story runs, Edward's working hard on the road with a pick and he thinks of the past when he had a better life. Number 2, Edward is asked by a colleague to come to the pub but refuses and the mystery deepens. Edward is followed by his colleague Seth, who's returning something to him. I actually decided that that would be a good place to start my story. Edward explains to Seth his wealthy background, his commitment to his disabled sister, and his promise to make amends for his misspent youth by caring for her and saving her money for her future and not spending it now. And I added a happy ending. Edward considers that in the future Petra's wealth might make her more interesting to Seth, but he remembers that Seth is kind and honourable and he stops worrying. So this is the full text of the story on the right hand side, and highlighted in colours are some techniques that I've used. Determinedly, like a huge engine, Edward's taut muscles raised the pick and struck the asphalt as he had 60 times since his last rest. With a plink thud it landed and he stood upright, back aching. A young man of 23, sweating and focused, he pointlessly wiped his forehead with his wrist, but the sweat continued to trickle into his eyes. He had time for a private thought in the moments before the supervisor came near. His favourite one, the grand ball on his 18th birthday in a hall with mirrored walls, beautiful girls in cream and pink silk, and flowing champagne effortlessly delivered by waiters in scarlet tailcoats. In paragraph 2, Edward's asked by a colleague to come to the pub, but he refuses. Soon, but never soon enough, the shift was over. Edward picked up his rag of a shirt and twisted it, winding it round his boulder head, and then his neck to mop up the sweat, but nothing could ever get the coal smell of asphalt out of his nostrils. At least the boys were friendly and jovial, if a little bawdy. Seth ran up and tapped on Edward's shoulder. "Ed, come to the tavern with us, I dare you." Edward turned to Seth's grime and sweat-streaked face and smiled. "Thanks, Seth, but I can't, I'm sorry." Dabbing away as much sweat as he could, he untwisted his shirt, put it on, and turned from the group, making his way home anxiously. Seth's face furrowed, and he joined in with the banter, trying not to dwell on another of Ed's rejections. Ed sometimes behaved like a man from a different world. Seth was trying not to be offended by his constant refusals. Sorry if the text doesn't quite match what I'm reading, but unfortunately some of it's blocked by the little picture of me in the corner. As you can see, some of this is highlighted as it was in the previous slide. Rag of a shirt and his boulder head are both metaphors, and then we have quite a few words here which show that there's some anxiety and worry on Edward's part, anxiously furrowed and refusals. In paragraph 3, which is where I chose to start the story, it says this: "As Edward neared the ill-fitting door and bent down to fish the key out from under the pot by the step, he heard urgent running behind him. Concerned, he straightened up and spun round. He was far too tired for another street robbery of the sort that were far too common in this alley. It was Seth, and he was carrying Edward's pick." So here we have the dilemma, and we're wondering what's happening. Why is his friend running after him? And there's quite a lot of language in here which shows that the living situation for Edward is quite poor. Ill-fitting door, the key is in a pot by the step, which isn't very secure. There's the word concerned, urgent, tired, robbery, and alley, which all suggests that it's a place where there's a lot of crime. Here we have the quite long resolution, which includes a lot of dialogue, and dialogue means that each piece of dialogue from a different speaker needs to be on a new line, which is very important to make it clear. "It's time," thought Edward. "Thanks, my friend, come in, I want you to meet someone." As the door opened, a plain and neglected room revealed a teenage girl in a wooden wheelchair. She had a pleasant face and smiled warmly. "Hello. Good evening, miss." "So," said Seth, confused. "Petra is the reason I cannot come out drinking, Seth. I work to support her and she needs me." Edward continued the story. He'd grown up in a comfortably wealthy house, wasted his youth, left his parents in despair, and been disinherited in favour of his sister. He had not worked at his studies and as a result was not able to follow his father into the trade. His only real selling point was his strength. His parents had died from broken hearts at his selfishness, at least that's what he thought, and left all their money to Petra. At least Edward realised his error. He had vowed as a belated apology to his parents to look after Petra and her money, saving it for her future after his death. So here you can see there are quite a lot of words relating to his wasted youth, including wasted, despair, disinherited, died from broken hearts, error, apology, vowed, and death. So these all relate to the difficult situation which he caused by not working and studying and inheriting the family business as a teenager. The last paragraph has a happy ending. He was a little worried about telling Seth about his wealthy sister, and on reflection Seth may now become rather more interested in Petra. But as he was a kind and honest man, that may not be a bad thing. So we have the words kind, honest, not a bad thing. So there is a happy ending. Hopefully you've seen some techniques. You can scroll back through this video more slowly and you can identify what part of grammar and what techniques I've been used that I didn't mention. There are lots of things that have been highlighted, and decide which semantic field or field of meaning a lot of the words fall into. So we have words to do with anxiety, we have words to do with the poor living conditions, and we have words to do with exhaustion in different parts of the story. The last thing that we did in the lesson was to write up the plans that we made in the previous lesson as a story, include the literary techniques, metaphor, simile, powerful adjectives and adverbs, some nouns and verbs which you can't avoid, and label all of those techniques down the side in a column. So the story wasn't just written completely across the page. Everybody made a column on the right hand side, and that column is where they labelled the techniques that they used in their story. I hope that's been useful, and we will next move on to descriptive writing. The work was emailed to me, and in the next lesson hopefully we will be fully operational on the ALO software, and the work will be set as assignments on there, which is also where I will mark it. So once again, a reminder of the lesson objectives, and I hope that's useful. Scroll through it slowly if you'd like to see the story in more detail.